Good evening. A few Sundays ago, we shared the story of Jesus' Sermon on the Plains in the Gospel of Luke. Today, we hear a portion of the much more well-known version of the story from the Gospel of Matthew, known as the Sermon on the Mount. This is the traditional story that we begin every year with the beginning of Lent. And in this story, when Jesus saw the crowds that were gathered to hear him teach, he went up on a mountain. He sat down, and his disciples gathered close. And there was a crowd listening to him teach. He taught them, saying the following words. Be careful that you don't practice your religion in front of people to draw their attention. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. Whenever you give to the poor, don't blow your trumpet, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, so that they may get praise from the people. I assure you that is the only reward they will get. But when you give to the poor, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that you may give to the poor in secret. Your Father who sees what you do in secret will reward you. When you pray, don't be like the hypocrites. They love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners so that people will see them. I assure you, that's the only reward they will get. But when you pray, go into your room, shut the door, and pray to your Father who is present in that secret place. Your Father who sees what you do in secret will reward you. And when you fast, don't put on a sad face. Like the hypocrites. They distort their faces so that people will know that they are fasting. I assure you that they have their reward. But when you fast, brush your hair and wash your face. Then you won't look like you are fasting to people, but only to your Father who is present in that secret place. Your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Stop collecting treasures for your own benefit on earth, where moth and rust eat them and where thieves break in and steal them. Instead, collect treasures for yourself in heaven, where moth and rust don't eat them and where thieves don't break in and steal them. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. invite you now to wonder along with me about today's story. I wonder about practicing our religion in front of people to draw their attention. I wonder why that means we will have no reward from our God who is in heaven. Perhaps it seems insincere.
It's all about our intent.
Okay,
So intent is to do it, if your intent is for it to be seen by other people, then maybe your intent isn't for it to be seen by God.
Yeah, it seems to me like vanity.
Sure, if the intent is what truly matters, then physical appearances may not be what actually matters.
Yeah.
To me, it sounds like taking the reward instead of receiving the reward.
So by doing it publicly, you're taking the reward rather than being open to receiving it. Yeah. So taking what has not yet been given, perhaps.
So when it says they've received they've gotten their reward, that's what.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it is about hypocrisy, or that's how I take it. And I think that is something that's easy to see in other people, but it's harder to see in ourselves.
Yeah, so there's hypocrisy perhaps in the public demonstration of piety, and that's something that's easier to see in other people than in ourselves. So perhaps we need this reminder.
Maybe it also has to do with how we're practicing our faith and what kind of situation, what kind of context. I'm just thinking that there's something coming up where people are going to have a public witness prayer, and given that situation, that it is important in that context.
So public witness can be important, can be a good thing. Yeah, sorry, I cut you off.
That it's depending on the context and like you said.
So it ties back to the intent. I wonder how practicing faith in secret might deepen our relationship with God.
I was thinking that when we pray or do these things in private, it's private between us and God. But if we're doing it in public, then there's other distractions and there's other people around.
Sure, so I know this from leading religious services, that when I'm thinking about how I'm viewed, it's a little harder to pray, right? And there's, whether you're leading or not, when you're going up and being seen, it's very easy to be distracted by that.
On the other hand, it's important to pray in community, not to show off, but to pray together with other people so that we're in community, and that's also important.
Sure, yeah, so
You know,
praying.
if you pray in secret all the time, then there's no community.
Right. It almost seems as if one were to take this too literally, then everybody would be closet theists. Right? And so there's something about praying in community that is a beneficial and good thing. We're here, after all.
the common thread I see here, which feeds off of what Judith said too, is that it has to start inside for the right reasons, whatever we do. And not be something we pursue for the external gratification, which Jesus is quite clear about. But if the interior origin and reality is there, then it makes sense to share with someone on that same level, because you're not just saying, I prayed for you, give me a brownie.
Sure, yeah, so there's something about external gratification, as you said, that makes it hard to be pure in your intent.
So when you're talking about like the bad examples, those are very immediate results. Like I pray in public, I can see the people looking at me like I'm good, excellent. If you can get the reward that this thing that you're supposedly doing with God, immediately that turns what should be a relationship into something very transactional. That is not the way to have a relationship with anyone or anything.
Sure, so the things that Jesus is warning against is perhaps turning spirituality, religion, into a transactional practice. Yeah. So I wonder what kind of reward Jesus is talking about. How God's reward is different from human praise.
We actually don't know what the reward is.
Sure, so, don't know.
You know, what is God's reward for us will be, I don't know. I don't think anybody really knows. But
Jesus certainly didn't say it's going to be X, Y, and Z things and lay it out. Yeah.
but on the other hand, by praying in community and with other people, there's a sense of togetherness to be the whole transaction is in love. It has to do with love. We love the people we pray with. And love is an active verb. So what we love, we treat well, we take care of.
So we can't be sure what the reward is, but we can be sure it has something to do with love.
Absolutely.
I'd just like to push back on the reward is unknown. I feel like there's an experience of the reward in this life as well. And it's a taste maybe of something else, but there are rewards that are deep and meaningful, are, moments and just feeling growing and seeing beautiful things happen and being able to appreciate them, and those kinds of rewards, I think, are part of what this teaching is about too.
So you experienced some of that reward already, as you say, a taste, perhaps a foretaste of what that reward might mean.
Well, I guess my personal belief is that, my comprehension of the totality of it is so tiny. But yeah.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
it is very kind of
So it's
even so.
tiny, but there's something there. Yeah, something you can taste.
When I pray, I experience like this
Yeah, so you experience a comfort in your prayer. In the act of praying, you experience comfort, perhaps a taste as well.
One thing we're not talking about though is treasure. The value of treasure.
Say more. Yeah, I mean, my next wondering, it was going to be which one of these messages is especially resonating with you today. Sounds like this one might be resonating with you, or this one.
This is the first time I've ever heard the question asked, what are the rewards one might hope for in heaven? Obviously not money, not treasures. What do we hope for? I think it's worth thinking about.
Yeah, so it's worth pondering for sure. Were you going to say more about treasure?
Yeah, well, the empire that we live in wants us to value goods and puts them out there for us to have whenever we want them, like Amazon Prime, you can get it tomorrow. And it's always out there in front of us and it's a temptation. And so to detach from that kind of value of things, of wanting more, of having treasure, physical treasure, prevents us from really getting what is really valuable, and that is human relationships and loving care and that sort of thing. It's not tangible. It's not a thing. And I think that that's really important for us in our society to really keep in mind that we're constantly being bombarded with the notion that having treasure is everything, and it's not.
Sure. So the physical treasures can be a distraction from the more intangible ones.
Not even a distraction, kind of. It's not even a distraction, it's like, maybe that's a good word. I'm not sure. But I think it's very powerful, especially in our culture.
For me, there sometimes is an intrinsic value in all these examples when I am doing the right thing for the right reasons. It just feels good. The example that comes to mind is choir rehearsal. It feels really good to sing a piece really well. There is an intrinsic satisfaction that is a wonderful thing, quite apart from whether or not Sanford likes it. Which is the extrinsic part, just for the contrast. It just feels really cool because the overtones hit and everything rings. And it doesn't happen that often, but when it does, it's wonderful. And another example that comes to mind is endorphins and things like that. When you hug somebody, the person offering the hug gets a good feel from it as well. There's the chemical reaction that you get when you hug somebody, even if, you're offering something to someone else. And it's really wonderful now that I finally have some kind of internal compass when I know I'm doing the right thing and it does feel right.
So good things feel good. And perhaps
You know, it isn't always.
other things can feel good too, but mostly it's good that good things feel good, mostly.
Well, there are times when I'm in the middle of a really contentious situation, but it feels good to be there for
Yeah.
the right reasons. Even if it's very painful or a big struggle.
So,
Thank you. You asked about what's spoke, and the treasure one, I think, for me does, but it's not just now. I mean, I work in archaeological sites and I work with a lot of historians, and the looting of treasure goes back millennia. So the idea of collecting treasure and that being at the center of conflict and war and so many other things, and some people having more than others, is an age-old thing as far as we understand it in historic.
so we can fight each other for this stuff, but not for this stuff.
And so, I mean, it's different in how it works now because of modern technology and other things, but that concept of some people having more and fighting other people, harming other people, making decisions that are bad for other people or the planet or whatever in order to get treasure is not a new idea. But for me, going back to what many people have said, the joy that I get is in that I get to visit some of these places and work with people that are passionate and care about these things, and we're figuring out how to preserve them and present them and allow people to study them and so forth. And there's an enormous satisfaction in, I have no interest in owning any of these things, but in being able to perpetuate them for the good of lots of other people, it's really good.
So, I wonder where the good news is for you today, given all that has been shared.
I'm here, I'm alive, and I'm loved.
You're here, you're alive, you're loved.
For me, the good news is, even though sort of in the story, we talk a lot about the immediate rewards, the sort of hypocritical behaviors, and in our discussion, I really felt an appreciation, not articulated in the story, in some of those rewards we get from feeling good, from feeling like we're doing the right thing. I mean, for me, that's sort of the good news is the joy that exists. Here on earth now.
Yeah. A taste of that joy.
As someone with tremendous anxiety, the good news is that I am not here to impress any of you. Load off of my mind. Thank Jesus.
We're not here to impress others.
For me, the good news is that there's nothing more achievable than going off by myself and praying.
There's, the task before us is immediately accessible. Well, thank you all. Thank you for wondering along with me about today's space.